thought the host was supposed to introduce, or you want me to continue with it now? All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have panels of distinguished speakers here and presidents, including the likes of Dr. Vera Amil, Dr. Minnie Lu, Mr. James Locke. The host, by the way, is Christiana Wong. We have Dr. Mike. We have the PUMM president, Tan Lei Siong. Oh, and Miss Raya is in now. And of course, we have Simon Wong now, representing MRCA, since Dr. Cyril Gary is unable to join us. Moving on from here, the objective of today's press conference is for us to discuss on why the needs for COVID-19 bills or acts with the temporary measures behind it. A coalition of Malaysian business communities from various associations and trade bodies urgently now appeal to the Malaysian government to hasten the implementation of COVID-19 bills through their press conference today on 29 April, and they have just started, and we hope to do it within the hours. This is the first time in Malaysia history that various associations band together and conducted a press e-conference using Zoom and broadcast it live in Facebook to appeal to the Malaysian government to save businesses, which ultimately will save jobs. We collectively appeal to the government to implement these bills soonest to protect businesses from collapsing for at least a temporary period up to the end of the year, 31st December 2020, and where necessary, extension where need. With the hope that when the bill is quickly passed, all the contractual obligations will continue unabated. Many businesses as of now, especially in the retailing, manufacturing, and servicing industries, have business contractual commitments that once the MCO is over, such commitments will be enforced on these businesses, and thereon, numerous disputes will take place, which will badly impact businesses. Many businesses, especially in the retail, manufacturing, and service industries, have business contractual commitments where the financial commitment will be enforced and legal dispute.
Just hold on. In Facebook Live, there's a request that you speak louder. They cannot hear you.
Okay, I have to go nearer to my mic, I guess. Post-MCO, where many businesses, especially in the retailing, manufacturing and servicing industries, have business contractual commitments where their financial commitments will be enforced and legal disputes will take place in abandon, which will impact their business survival. It is of paramount importance for COVID-19 bills. If I use a bill, it's actually an act as well, similar to the Singapore COVID-19 Temporary Measure Act 2020, which was put in place to protect businesses from legal suits when they are unable to fulfill their contractual obligations in order to sustain their businesses post-MCO. Furthermore, the bill or the act should provide for the sharing of financial burdens from owners of shopping malls, shop lots, offices, and factory for a reduction in rental. Therefore, a COVID-19 bill has to be introduced to enable business to receive some temporary relief, as many business owners will find themselves unable to fulfill that contractual obligations. Item number 1 is where we are now proposing for prohibition to take legal actions. Now, appropriate measures need to be spelled out in the proposed bills to certain contract that prohibits certain legal actions to be taken between counterparties and or their guarantors if the inability of the counterparties to perform such contract is to a material extent caused by COVID-19. This includes not only rent, i.e. leases, but also apply to the supply of construction materials, performance of private corporate bonds, performance of provision of goods and services for event, performance of goods and services relating to tourism, performance of private hire purchase related to factoring service providers, and repossession of goods used for the purpose of trade and industries. We are now asking for a share of financial burdens. On the sharing of these financial burdens, business owners would implore that the rental be based on gross turnover, sharing for small and for shopping malls during this challenging time until normalcy is in place. If this is not favorable, government should consider a 80% tax rebate for rental reductions to landlord. The rental reduction would help ensuring business sustainability for all involved. Of course, if you're allowing mall or whatsoever to open, we must allow stores, departmental stores and restaurants to operate, but under strict standard of operating procedures, mirroring what Hong Kong methodology of no more than 4 persons on a table and not more than certain numbers of guests in the restaurants. Now, this key particular subject, wage subsidies, is of paramount importance. The current terms and conditions that limit to 200 employees per company to claim wage subsidies should be removed by SOCSO or PECURSO because all employees, regardless of sectors, pay EIS. Furthermore, to qualify the wage subsidies, we appeal to the government to remove the conditions attached to the mutual reductions, i.e. the pay cut of wages between employers and employees to sustain business survival in the private sectors. Employers surely must be given the rights to manage its workforce and rein in wage reduction as the employers see fit. Ultimately, it is the employers who are in charge of the employees' welfare. So the next 6 to 12 month businesses will certainly drop due to adverse and market conditions. Hence, no businesses can guarantee employment and full wage. Adjustment due to unforeseen circumstances will need to be made based on market conditions. Why the urgent need for the approval of these COVID-19 bills on the first Parliament sitting 18 May 2020? The way we see it, the government should implement this bill without any delay to protect businesses when Parliament convenes on 18 May. I've highlighted those pertinent points earlier. Now I'm going to sum it up. 1. The relief imposed by law will save jobs, businesses, companies, and investment, which will then continue to multiply the economy. 2. Contracting parties will not waste time and resources fighting in court over application of doctrine of frustrations or the meaning of force majeure clauses. Hence, there will be legal certainty resulting in commercial certainties. And third, of course, we want to preserve, or rather preserve, I will use a persevere, but preserve legal rights, such as the right of legal actions by stopping limitations. The bill is only a temporary measures till end of the year or extended as and when the needs arises. When the bill is passed, the contractual obligations will continue unabated. Back to you, Chris, as the host. Chris, are you there? Chris?
Thank you, Dr. Raymond, for reading the press release. 12 association has come together again. To those who have just came in, especially the press, 12 association had came in together this evening for a joint press conference. It's very historic. Together all the business owners and also all the association president here. Our intention is actually to bring forth our appeal to the government to implement the COVID-19 Act as soon as possible. And although we know that Parliament is going to convene on the 18th of May, but we also would like to request to the government to consult us as the representative of the business and industry in Malaysia, so that the COVID-19 Act that is proposed in Parliament on the 18th of May will be a much more holistic bill. I therefore would like to invite each and every one of the association president and also representative to say a few words on why we are hosting this press conference and the holistic approach in presenting or enacting this bill come this 18 May 2020 during the Parliament sitting. From the screen, I would like to invite the first one, Encik Syed Narkis. Encik Syed Narkis is actually the legal counsel of the Bumi Putra Retail Organisation. Over to you, Tuan Syed.
Thank you, Moderator Chris, for the brief introduction. Now
Just to interrupt you, Cik Syed, you got to speak louder because on the Facebook they have commented that our voice is too soft actually. So you're practically hearing that I'm actually like screaming, but not screaming.
Screaming, okay.
Screaming.
Sure. I'll raise it a few bars. Okay, so look, let's be very clear about the COVID situation, right? The COVID situation has hurt everyone emotionally, physically, financially. So when we talk about financially, when we talk about businesses, most transactions are not documented with proper contracts, right? Even if these contracts have force majeure or frustration clause in them, normally these clauses are not worded well, or normally they favor one party over the other. Therefore, having a bill or an act like the COVID Act, something that they've enacted in Singapore, Hungary, and UK, is something very desirable for Malaysia, because what it does is it essentially puts into place a force majeure type situation for both parties, and it spells out what are the rights and obligations for the parties and how they can resolve this predicament. Because if you leave it to the parties, obviously the stronger party would want to impose the bargaining position that they had negotiated in the contract over the party that is not as strong, right? And similarly, if there's no clause in the contract, then both parties are at a loss. The only relief that they have is to go to court, which we are trying to avoid. What we're trying to say is, look, we're not asking you to waive any rights. We're just saying put in a deferment kind of moratorium, 6 months, 12 months, whatever. We can have it retrospective back to the beginning of MCO, give some breathing space to the parties to structure their affairs. They may need to get loans, they may need to get financing, they may need to start business again, get the cash flow. That is all we're asking for. And for instances where some deposits had been paid, we're saying, let's not forfeit these clauses, because why are we forfeiting these clauses? It's not their fault that the events could not be held. It was because of the COVID situation, right? So that is some of the things that we are angling to be included in the COVID Act. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Chris.
Next, I hand over to James Look from the MRA, Malaysian Retailer Association. James, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Basically, our retailer are facing...
James, thank you.
Basically, our retailer are facing an unprecedented crisis, basically a major health crisis and economic crisis. Most of the retailer in the month of February, sales dropped 60%. And in March 2020, 80 to 90% drop. In April, zero sales. And come this May, expected also the sales be very low. So with this zero revenue and all these fixed costs to pay, for example, like salary, staff salary, utility, statutory contribution, and rental. As we all know that not all the landlords are giving free rental and services during the MCO. Now, retailers are not able to meet this obligation, whether it's tenancy agreement, supplier agreement, or whatever contract. So they are basically facing this problem. So what we are actually appealing to our government, because force majeure, as mentioned by Tuan Syed earlier, you need to prove, the act of God and whether it's an act of frustration, So with this, to avoid all this litigation, unnecessary, court, all this, why not appeal to the government to come up with this COVID Act, a bill, so that we can focus, all of us focus on how to revive our business, which is very important, rather than take to each other to court. That's basically my view. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Next, I would like to invite Datuk Mira Amir Maidin, the president of the Bumiputra Retailer Organization, to say a few words. Datuk, over to you, Datuk. Speak louder, Datuk. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I hope this is loud and clear. Can you hear?
And
all right, good. You know, I'm looking at it on the basis of many of us here on the screen here are actually tenants. I have this peculiar situation that I am a landlord in many of the buildings because I have 27 buildings that I own myself. I'm also a tenant in many of the buildings. So I have this peculiar situation of trying to balance. From a landlord perspective, of course, I want as much rental as possible, but I'm also a tenant in many of the buildings, and I'm trying to see how I can get free rental where possible. In situations like this, and people always say that a true nature of a person comes out. People, and I would say that not all landlords are landlords with a good heart necessarily. Uh, Many of us are business people. Uh, we have to report to our shareholders. Many of the REITs, they have properties under trustees, and they are very, very difficult, and they're put in a very difficult position, especially when times like this, times like that no one has actually gone through. Many of us here were senior enough, but gone through the 1998 crisis, have gone through the 2008. But seriously, even at my age, I've never gone through something like this, where I'm lucky in a way because my is still operational. I can get certain cash flows and certain income, but many of my colleagues out there have zero revenue. And I feel that if there is no act coming out seriously by the government, this COVID-19 act, eventually many of us who are friends are going to become enemies. And this is something that we don't want to do, right? So, I mean, because we're all friends here, many of you are landlords, many of you are, some of you maybe even my tenants somewhere, and I'm the last person I'll be thinking, let's go to court and fight it out, you know? So if there's an act out there where spells out very clearly the right and wrongs, and then somebody there can decide, actually, sometimes when you can't decide, there's always a clause there, you can get an arbitrator, someone outside to come and kind of negotiate it out, a fair situation. I think in this world, everybody wants a fair situation. So a COVID-19 act, once put in, will be able to put everything out there. And like Tuan Sai said, and even James said, the weaker and the stronger party will be put on the equal footing. So at least, hopefully, with the result of that, all of us who are in business can go ahead and do business lah, and we can put this so-called pandemic behind us and move forward. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Amir. Thank you, Dr. Amir. Next, I would like to invite Datin Vini. Datin Vini, over to you. You have to speak louder. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks, Chris. Okay, I speak on behalf of the Branding Association of Malaysia and the Malaysian Hairdressing Association. So basically, I personally think this COVID-19 Act is really very important, as we have to need to implement it as soon as possible, because you have to understand the fact that a lot of the business owners out there really need to recover as soon as possible, because many of them are going through such tribal time, the challenges that let's say if I want to speak on behalf of the hairdressing, since March 18, it's really zero income. And it's really a trade that if we stopped our hands, we literally have nothing coming in. So, and it's really very important right now, because if this act is not put into perspective, so many of these hairdressers and business owners are actually renting from malls and from so many rental involved that is going to go into suing case. So, and even right on the Branding Association, many of the members are also facing that. And I really think that this act is so important for us to implement as soon as possible. And the government would really want this economy to come back sooner, because the more we delay it, everybody is suing everybody. Like just the other panel was just speaking. We will not want to be enemies to even some of our close associates, because this is going to happen if from malls to business owners suing each other. I really suggest that this COVID Act should be implemented as soon as possible. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bini. I would like to invite Dato' Maino, the president of ARFF. Dato', over to you. Kindly speak louder.
Thank you, Chris. I think we need to implement the COVID Act as soon as possible, because we, as a retailer or business owner, we're facing huge difficulties. And just like the other panelists have said just now, I don't want to repeat again. Definitely, the largest spaces receiving after the COVID, after MCO, definitely will be the legal office, the lawyer firm, because a lot of people will be involved in the legal suit. So that we don't want to be happens, definitely. But if we can have the COVID Act, COVID bill implemented, so definitely a lot of things will be more balanced, and that will be more easy for the businessman to revise our business by instance. Otherwise, we cannot pass through this pandemic, because bear to remember, MCO, this is only first MCO. I think any one of you, maybe or maybe not, you might think of MCO2. It's just like what's happening in Japan right now in Singapore, right? Anytime it will happen MCO2, right? So that will panic, definitely will close down and cease our business by MCO2 if we don't have a such act to protect the both party, the business party and the employee. Then people will be losing the jobs. Businesses will be closing, right? Because we cannot assure that MCO is not coming back until the vaccine is found. Otherwise, there might be MCO2 or might be MCO3 that happens, right? So this is what my point of view. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dato'. I would just want to add, God forbid MCO2 and MCO3. God forbid that. Over to you, Mr. Tan Lei Siong, the president of PUMM. Mr. Tan?
Lee Seong.
Lei Siong. I think he's not.
Another person.
Okay, let's move on to Puan Amy Suraya, the president of the Malaysia Budget Hotel. Puan, do say a few words and do speak louder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Basically, I'm the president of Budget Hotel with 2,300 members. Tourism is badly affected. We are the first to be hit and last to recover. So many of hotel operators and also owners are renting to many of the landlords. So I might say that COVID-19 Act is very important and must to be implemented very soon, as soon as possible. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Puan Amy. I think Tan is back. Tan, are you there? Yes, Tan, please do say a few words.
Okay. I think many of our friends do highlight about importance of implementing this COVID-19 Act. I think we believe that if this act will affect not only in business side, but it will become a social problem. As you know, the businessmen, if get affected, and it will affect our employee and also become individual family issue. So I urge that in coming this parliament meeting, we have the chance to come out to discuss or to pass through this COVID Act 19 is very, very important. Regardless anyone, I think all of us hope that we can solve this problem peacefully. We don't want to create more social problem. This is what we urge from all the politicians. Take away which party are you from. We need to pass this act to protect our harmony of our society and our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan. Very precise points, social issue. Now, to Dato' Gary Chua, our Facebook host today from MRC. Over to you, Dato' Gary.
This COVID law has been initiated by Singapore earlier, and Singapore being our neighbor, a lot of similarities in terms of business, in terms of retail and SMEs and all those. this is a very propitious and also timely to have this act to be implemented to protect all parties, especially as just now the Syed Najis was saying, especially the less protected ones, the weaker ones in the contract. Especially we have so many members in the malls and so many other places, even SMEs. So if there's no protection on this area, many of them probably their deposits and all this will be forfeited as well if they can't continue the business. As already many have spelled out that probably they probably have to trim off at least probably 20% of the outlets or the locations of many of these chain members, So if let's say should you withdraw from those places, you perhaps your deposits and all this will be sort of forfeited. So we do not want to come to this stage, is it? So we also can't depend on the goodwill of landlords alone. So the act will be timely to protect the interests of all the retailers as well. I was engaging also with the government earlier on this COVID law. I was told they are coming with it. They are actually reviewing it. But this is a timely push by all the association to expedite this, I think, because this something has to be done immediately. We can't wait, is it? All right. Should there be any further delay, and should some of the landlords or the owners are a bit nasty, and a lot of serious repercussion will happen, is it? So I think it's good that we push through this as soon as possible, so that whatever issue that retailers and SMEs are facing will be resolved at least amicably through this process. So again, I think this is also being fair to especially the weaker parties. So this is again a very good move, I think, by all the association. We wish also to thank all the support in working as one together.
Thank you, Datuk Gary. And last but not least, Datuk Michael Kang, the president of SME Malaysia. Datuk Michael, over to you to say a few words.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I think
just hold on, Datuk Michael. You got to speak louder.
Okay, can. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chris. I think this is very important. This COVID-19 Act, we foresee if we don't come out the COVID-19 Act, I think a lot of suing case will be around, especially employer-employee, landlord and tenant, even bankers and the customer. I think all this will be happening after 6 months. I think everyone will be facing, I think by a lot of the SME will go bankrupt. I think this is very scary. I just read through, I've done another round of survey. We currently about 2005 respond. 25% of SME plan to close down. And against 40%, they're going to lay off the staff. I think this is the current figures. Are going to close by Fridays. I think it will be more serious. I think we definitely need urgently these COVID-19 acts, especially employer and employee, which is governments give a very bad misleading comment to the employee. Make a lot of employees refuse to work. They feel that the government's been mentioned very clear that we do not need to work. We stay at home. We will get full salary payments. I think this is totally wrong. I think this is not. I won't support on this. You see, a lot of SME are facing really crisis on the cash flow. How can them going to pay all this with all the employment act and all to pay the retrenchment fees, whatever? I think we hope that the government can remove all the condition which is subsidy as well. I think this is very important. We hope that the government can seriously look into it. With COVID-19 Act, we really need it, to go through. We have to work together, hand on hand, governments, employer, employee, and include the peoples of the Malaysian to work together and to overcome this crisis. To rebuild our country. I think it's very important, especially on the economy side.
Thank you, Datuk Michael.
Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. In fact, I just want to add on. Yesterday, when I sent the press release to Astro, they asked that how many businesses that this coalition of business represent. I told them that the coalition of business over here represent more than 20 to 30,000 businesses in the country, both SME and also large businesses as well. In totality, we represent almost 3 millions of employees in the market. And one of the reasons why today we are having this press conference is because not only to protect us as business owner, but once the business owner is protected, the employees are also protected. And that is the reason why we are having this joint press conference today. As Dr. Raymond mentioned earlier, it is very historic. This is the first time that all the associations come together. We have an e-press conference via Zoom. Technology makes it happen. I want to sum up these things, and before I hand over to Dr. Raymond for closing, there are 5 things that we want to highlight, which Dr. Raymond have read just now, and most of our panelists over here have mentioned. Number 1 is the prohibition to take legal action should be included in the COVID-19 Act, and sharing of financial burden, either to the extension of rental of shops, factories, or offices. All right, we are not asking for waivers, but we are asking for extension. Number 3 is standard operating procedures, all right, especially for retail premises, all right, and especially for maybe parks and also for cinema as well, right? So SOPs. And number 4, we want to highlight on the wage subsidy. We are aware that companies can claim wage subsidy from Pekeso, but however, there's a cap up to 75 people for 800 ringgit, if I'm not mistaken. Right? So we urge, right, as part of this business coalition, we urge the government to make a way, right, to make away the cap, because every employee pay SIP, every employer pay SIP to Pekeso as well. So there shouldn't be a cap to this. So every employees, every employers, whether they are 300 staff or 400 staff or 100 staff, everyone should be able to claim their wage subsidy. And the last one is, the government must allow the private sector to renegotiate the salary with their employees on a free giver and free taker basis. Right? We are not forcing our employees to take no salary at all, but to force the employers to sign a 6-month guarantee that there won't be pay cut. We cannot actually, most of the businesses cannot actually follow that, because some businesses may eventually at the end of this MCO period close shop. And what guarantee can we give at this period of time? So I want to highlight these 5 things that is written in the press release. I hand over back to Dr. Sri Raymond, our learned friend over here, to close the press conference. Dr. Raymond, back to you.
Thank you, Chris. At this juncture, with the deliberation of all the panels here, I'm sure the press has already a fair understanding of why the urgent need for COVID-19 legislation, where the parliament sits on 18th of May. By the way, this is no longer a pandemic. A pandemic is on a smaller scale. We have now moved into a crisis, and this is on the bigger scales. For the benefits of the press, let me explain more on the present state of play, and this is where SITE as a legal counsel will appreciate more of what I'm going to say. The present state of play right now is we are reliance on existing legislation and the Prevention and Control of Infectious Disease Act 1988, which is the Act 342, they call it. Under the subsection of 11.2 of that Act 342, the government of Malaysia gazetted today the 10 regulations, of which 4 categories I'm going to emphasize. 1, measures with infected local areas. 2, extension of operation that affect all of us. 3, compounding of offenses, where many of us have these MCO problems, and the amendment of the corrigendum. Now, what I didn't come across as I was discussing with Dr. Lim Chi Wei of Screen, we didn't come across regulations on social distancing. There's no regulation on that. Wearing a mask, there's no regulation on that. Hygiene, there's no regulation on that. And that ought to be contained within that COVID-19. Now, the policy measures and with legal implications, if all of us here will remember, Bank Negara Malaysia, with the deferment of loans or financing payment of 6 months. Now, that policy was for temporary relief for housing and car loans. But there are other financiers who are not within BNM, that's Bank Negara Malaysia jurisdiction. Example, Mercedes-Benz and BMW, While luxurious vehicles, there should be equality of treatment. They're adopting a case-by-case assessment of these applications. 2, Company Commission of Malaysia. The value and period of indebtedness that's affecting all of us under that Section 466 of the Companies Act 2016 to 50,000 and 6 months to respond until 31st December. We do not know when. And I'm sure, sir, you share with me as well. We don't really know when. And also the registration of death and birth. 90 days grace period calculated from the date MCOs is lifted. So something we need to look at. Now, the additional issues to consider arising from the MCOs, statutory deadlines, the most important of which discussed earlier, the limitation period. Now, the Limitation Act 1953, quite an old Act, Act 254, does not provide for extension of time arising from that Act 242, which I referred to earlier, Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1988. Then you have the meeting prescription, which affect all of us. The meeting prescribed in Companies Act 20, I mean, we have a long list. I just pick up the one that affect all of us. The meeting prescribed in Companies Act 2016, the Act 777, if you care to check it out, and the Stock Management Act 2013, Act 757 that affect all the landlords. Also, the contractual obligation relief on specific performance, payment obligations, and supply obligations. This is what we are talking about. Then you have the court proceedings. The video conferencing which we are having.
We are losing you. We are losing you.
Okay, court proceeding, video conferencing, virtual and online hearing. Court to be open and public. Court shall see at such time and at such place as the chief judge or president of court of appeal or justice. It's something which many of us are going to face. The way forward, the way I'm sure all of you see that I see, is the other jurisdiction with onerous legislation. Example, UK Coronavirus Act 2020. UK Corona Act 2020 deals with public health care, pension, tort, and elections. The core statutory provisions relate to life links, which is important because many of us are doing so many life links, to criminal courts proceeding in the interest of justice. I suspect to make it consistent with open justice. Now, someone mentioned about the Singapore COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act 2020. I'd like to highlight the 5 features contained in this Singapore COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act 2020. Key 1, it applies to contractual performance on or after 1st February 2020, just before the commencement of MCO, and contracts entered into or renewed before the next March 2020. Feature number 2 is the measures enforced for 6 months renewable to 1 year. Number 3, it provides temporary relief for the inability to perform contracts, financially distressed individuals, firms, and businesses, temporary measures for conduct of meetings, court proceedings, and remission of property tax. That is very important. And key feature number 4 is the contracts covered, including non-residential leases or licenses, construction and supply contracts, provisions of goods and services, loan facilities, court and insolvency proceedings, and the enforcement of securities. And number 5, of course, the adjudication process comprising 100 assessors. For Malaysia to move forward, the omnibus legislation, I use the word omnibus legislation, is the best approach to deal with this temporary relief. Measures of statutory deadlines and variation of contracts being the key area the government of Malaysia is making policy decisions. So on behalf of everyone here, we hope that our respective MPs will help to push for this omnibus COVID-19 legislation. On that note, I rest my case.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raymond. I would like to once again extend my appreciation to all the representatives of the business association over here. By alphabetical order, ASEAN Retail Chain and Franchise Federation, Branding Association of Malaysia, Bumiputra Retailers Organization, Federation of Malaysian Fashion, Textile and Apparel, Malaysia Budget Hotel Association, Malaysia Digital Chamber of Commerce, Malaysian Hairdressing Association, Malaysia Retail Association, Malaysia Retail Chain Association, Macmillan Woods Association of Networks of Accountants, Persatuan Usahawan Maju Malaysia, and SME Association of Malaysia. On behalf of the 12 business association over here, we want to thank you to everyone who has tuned into our live Facebook press conference for the first time in Malaysian history, and also to all the press. We hope that you will cover the news tonight or this evening and bring forth the voices of the business community to the government and to the parliamentarian. We end this press conference and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.